Hi everyone. Hope y'all are having a fantastic Sunday. Justin here. I hope you had a good week this past week. I know that I did. It was a good week. We had a lot of things going on. Got to see my parents for a little bit, which was nice. It was good to spend some time with them. Um, Had some interesting times with my family and friends online, and that was pretty cool. Anyway, I hope you're having a good start to your week today, and hope you are staying sane and finding some ways to stay connected to other people. I had my first Dungeons and Dragons party this week, and it was just as weird as I thought it would be, but I had a really good time. It was fun to get together with some of my brothers and a brother-in-law and some other friends, and just kind of learn something new. Again, a very strange thing, but we had a good time. I hope you will put yourself out there sometimes and try some things that you normally wouldn't try. And you never know, it might be more fun than you thought. And so I know that I had more fun than I thought I was going to have. But anyway, back on to some more important things other than Dungeons and Dragons. We do have some winners. I want to announce the winners of the photo scavenger hunt. So we had a tie for first, and we had a tie for first between Natalie Parker and Faith and Grace Knowles. And so they will both be crowned champions of the photo scavenger hunt. And also doing really well in second place was Danny Harris. And so I'll get together with them to see about getting y'all your prizes. So anyway, congratulations to y'all for doing well. It was interesting to see what y'all came up with there, so congratulations. We'll be having some other stuff like that throughout the coming weeks and all of that. So anyway, pay attention to that and participate. All right, well, this week I wanted to kind of start a series. We're going to be talking about Jesus for a while. Now, Jesus, obviously, very important to us, our Savior, and obviously a very common topic. But you know what? We can never have enough of Jesus. And so I wanted to start a series where we're going to look into Jesus' life a little bit. And today we're going to talk about Jesus and the real life. We're going to start a series called The Real Life of Jesus. And we'll take a look at a few different things every week and just kind of learn a little bit more about Jesus. And y'all will have some kind of homework things to do. I'll put some verses on the screen where y'all can look them up yourselves. You can pause it or screenshot it to get what you'll have to look up, and then we'll have some questions and things about that. Now, one of my favorite things to watch on TV, there's lots of stuff I like to watch on TV. There's a whole lot of TV right now that we're catching up on, which is good and bad, but I like to watch kind of like reality shows. Now, we all know that sometimes reality shows are not very real, but there are some shows that are a little bit more real. We know that they're all probably more scripted than we would like, but sometimes it's fun to watch other people, have mess ups or have successes, or it's just interesting to learn more about people that are real famous or that we like or don't like or whatever. Watching one right now on Shaquille O'Neal called The Shaq Life. And it's just pretty interesting. He's an interesting guy, so it's fun to learn more about him. I know there's probably some reality shows that you like or maybe don't like, But the thing about reality shows is that sometimes they're more real than others, and sometimes we can watch a reality show and think, oh, that's not real. That's totally scripted and all of that. Well, you know what? That's how a lot of people think about Jesus. They do not think that he's real. They think it was scripted or made up, But there's a lot of us Christians who believe that Jesus was who he said he was, and that he was a real person, a real man, and also a real God at the same time. According to Wiki Answers, there are 2 billion people in the world who claim to be Christians. Now, we know that if you just claim to be a Christian, it doesn't automatically make you an actual Christian, a follower of Christ. We know a lot of people check that box because that's what their family is, or that their the friends want them to be a Christian or whatever. But there's 2 billion people who claim to be Christians, and so if you're follower of Christ, that means certain things. That means we should know about him first off. We should know about Jesus. If you're a fan of something, that typically means that you have some knowledge of that topic or team or band or actor or actress or whatever, who it is that you're a fan of. You know some stuff about them, and you somehow are emotionally connected to them. You will support them, and in some ways you want to be like them. So I am a big baseball fan, a big Texas Rangers fan. I know a lot about the Texas Rangers. I know who's on the team, who's not on the team. I know how they've done in the past. I've been heartbroken whenever they've lost. I've also been ecstatic when they've won. I am a fanatic of the Texas Rangers. But do I have as strong emotions about Jesus? Well, sometimes yes, but sometimes not as much as I should. So, today let's learn a little bit about Jesus. This was a guy that lived 2,000 years ago, that walked the earth. And I think, throughout history, history proves that Jesus was a real life man who walked the earth, and was a kind of a self-proclaimed prophet, a teacher. And, there's a lot of historical evidence about him. So let's take a look at a few things. The first fact that we'll talk about today was that Jesus was indeed a real person that lived almost or over 2,000 years ago on earth. There's just about more written in throughout history about Jesus than any other human. There probably is. And there's also more historical proof about Jesus, the man, than just about anybody else in our history books. And you know what? Growing up in school, I was a big fan of history. I found it interesting. I like to learn about where we came from, what we learned, who people were, and how we got from there to here. And there's a lot of people in our history books that we never question, that we just see their names in there and we take it for granted that they were true. Well, there's more proof about Jesus than just about any other person in ancient history. He was written of in lots of books, lots of history books. There was lots and lots of first-person accounts of him, walking around the time that he was, and in Israel and in the Roman Empire. There's just a lot of proof of him actually being a real life human that walked the earth. There's very little argument from historians. That's pretty rare that there's really no doubt as to whether there was a Jesus. Now, they may not believe that he is the Son of God, that he is God, but there's no doubt that he did walk the earth. And we read, fact number 2, we read about Jesus' life on earth through the 4 Gospels. And we all know them: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Hezekiah. No, John. But we know that. We read Jesus' life through the accounts of 4 different people. And it's interesting because those 4 books of the Bible kind of all tell a slightly different version of the same thing. And, if we think about it, if you and your friends go watch a movie, and at the very end of the movie, we ask you to describe what happened in the movie, well, y'all are all going to tell slightly different accounts of the same thing. Some of y'all will focus on certain parts and completely forget about other parts. But, if I were to hear your reviews of the movie or account of the movie, I could get a pretty good idea of what was going on in the movie through multiple accounts. And so I think it's interesting to read the 4 Gospels and see how they line up. They don't really contradict each other. But there's some debate on certain timing of different things and things like that. But they tell a complete story through 4 different people, kind of telling their version of what they've found out about Jesus. So it's super interesting. Matthew was a tax collector who became a disciple of Jesus. His original name was Levi, but before he traveled with Jesus and got to witness all that he wrote about Jesus. Mark knew the Apostle Peter, who was another disciple of Jesus. Mark's stories about Jesus were told to him by his buddy Peter, who witnessed them. Luke was a doctor who didn't witness the events of Jesus, but traveled around after Jesus went to heaven and talked to people who witnessed everything and wrote down everything that he learned. He wrote his findings in the book of Luke, which is about the life of Jesus, and then in the book of Acts, which is all about the early church. And then John was also a disciple of Jesus, and he witnessed all of Jesus' life. His gospel is written very differently than the other three. John went on to write a few other books in the Bible, including the book of Revelation. What's cool about it is that they kind of all tell their own unique version, but they all mesh together beautifully to tell us a more complete kind of vision of who Jesus was on earth. But why did God include 4 books about the same thing? Well, I think first off it helps prove Jesus' life. The more accounts of something that you have, the more proof there is that it actually happened. And someone might focus on one thing, whereas another person might focus on another thing, like we talked about with the movie review. And so we get different perspectives of the same thing. That's one thing that's beautiful about the Bible, is that we can read different parts of the Bible and it means different things to different people. And they can both be true. Sometimes I read parts of the Bible when I'm going through one phase of my life and it means something different to me when I'm in a different state. So that's one reason. Another reason why God gave us 4 different versions of that. Now here's a question for you. When do you think Jesus was created? When was Jesus created? Well, it's kind of a trick question, because we know that Jesus is part of the Trinity and Jesus is God. And so Jesus has always been there. Jesus, the carpenter from Nazareth, said that he who has seen him, Jesus, has seen the Father. That's John 14:9. He said that he existed before Abraham. That's John 8:58. And he was equal with the Father. John 5:17 and 18. Jesus claimed the ability to forgive sins. Mark 2:5-7. Which the Bible teaches was something that God alone can do. Isaiah 43:25. The New Testament equated Jesus as the creator of the universe, John 1:3, and that he is the one who holds everything together, Colossians 1:17. And in John 1 and 2, we read that in the beginning was the Word of God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning, and we know that Jesus is the Word. All of these verses help us to know that Jesus is God. So there's no doubt that Jesus was a human who walked the earth. But there's also no doubt that Jesus was God, is God, and that he was with God at the beginning, because he is God. Now, I don't want to go crazy into the Trinity, because it can just blow my mind, and I don't have my brain completely wrapped around how that works. It's kind of like asking someone to explain God. It's hard to understand all of the intricacies of it, of who God is. But Jesus was 100% man, and he was 100% God. He is God. So based on that, do you think Jesus existed in the Old Testament before he came to earth? Absolutely, he did. And here's some interesting stuff about that. In the Old Testament, there's numerous times when it refers to the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament. And so I've done some research. It's super interesting because, in the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord, in many instances, confirms that, or the angel of the Lord does things that only God can do, like we talked about forgiving sins. And the people that the angel of the Lord spoke to confirmed that they were actually talking to the Lord, to God. And then in a few other instances, it's kind of gives more of the impression that the angel of the Lord is Jesus. And there's more proof of that in different verses. So it's interesting, but when the Old Testament is talking about the angel of the Lord, generally, and scholars will debate some of this, but generally it's accepted that the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament is Jesus. And we all know that Jesus is God. And there are a few instances where it makes it sound like the angel of the Lord is a created entity. But for the most part, the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament is commonly accepted to be Jesus. So Jesus existed before the New Testament, before he manifested himself in the form of a human body in the New Testament. So super interesting stuff. So we need to understand this about Jesus. Jesus is 100% man, and he is 100% God at the same time. That means that while he was on earth, he was fully a human being. Whenever he fell down, and got a scrape on his knee, he bled. It's kind of weird to think, but Jesus bled, hurt, cried, was happy, just like us. It's hard to wrap my head around God of the universe coming down and be willing to suffer hardships like we do. But on the other hand, he also got to experience the good parts of being human from a different perspective. It's again, my mind's kind of blowing a little bit, but all the parts of the body, he had heart, lungs, eyes, everything, just like we do. And it's again crazy that he would put himself in that. I mean, it's kind of like being king and then deciding you want to be a farmer, a pauper for a little bit. He is high above us, but decided to come down to our level. But he was also 100% God and didn't give up being God just because he was down on earth. He still had all of his heavenly powers, and thankfully he showed some of those to people around, and by doing miracles and different things, and even put some of those on display for us as kind of proof of who he was. Because us humans, we like our proof. I like proof. When someone tells me something, I try not to believe it right off the bat. I want some proof of that. If someone tells me something that's a little controversial, I want to have proof of that. And so, you know what? We're going to dig a little bit more into the rest of Jesus' life, but today's main point, Jesus was 100% human on earth, but he's also 100% God. Once we understand that, then it's easier for us to follow him, because him coming down on earth gave us inspiration and also gave us a path to follow for being who he wants us to be. So I'm going to show you some verses, and these are some things that I want y'all to pause on the screen or do a screenshot and look these verses up, and this is y'all's kind of homework for the week. And so look these verses up. These are some verses that talk about Jesus being 100% man and Jesus being 100% God. Cool. All right. So check the links below. I am praying for all you guys. Again, I know this is an interesting and a difficult time. It's hard to imagine that this is how 2020 was going to be. But it's almost May, which is crazy because y'all are almost out of school. And I know some of y'all probably think that school's already done and all that, and I understand that. But it's just crazy to think that it's almost May and that it's going to be summer here before too long. So anyway, check the links down below. I've got some interesting things for y'all to check out, some things that are educational, biblical, some fun things as well. But I hope y'all are doing great, and I do look forward to seeing y'all soon. It sounds like maybe things are starting to get a little bit better, and that maybe we can start meeting together again. We'll see how that goes. But until then, stay safe, stay home, and stay in the Word. Love you guys. Bye.